The AI Standard Surface material is a wonderful material. It's kind of an all-in-one, so it does a lot of things. If you're used to the Phong or the Blinn, they don't give you the same results and they don't give you all of the options. Most of the newer softwares are including all-in-one materials like this, so if you're used to Unity or Unreal, they've all got a material that's got a number of different features. With the AI Standard Surface, what I'm going to do is open up the Arnold render view. So we'll be looking at a render of my egg here, and the egg material, my AI Standard Surface material, over here. First, with the AI Standard Surface material, some of you already know that there are a number of presets that you can apply. I'm over in the Property Editor. I've left-clicked on Presets, and now if I wanted to turn this into a copper material, I think I'm going off the screen. Let's move that over. Presets, copper. I could just click Replace, and that will change all of my settings to cause this to behave more like copper. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Is it fun? Yeah, it's fun. Now, I don't want to work with the presets because today we are going to do more about learning the in-depth ways and means of the AI Standard Surface. So I'm actually going to delete this AI Standard Surface node, and I will create a new one. I will assign that to my egg by middle mouse dragging and dropping, and now I'm back where I started. If I look here in my property editor, the first tab that I've got available is this thing called base, and base corresponds to diffusion. The base weight has a value of 0.8. Diffusion is the spread of color across an object surface. The problem with that is that color is created by light. As light reflects off of an object surface, we see it as color. No surface, unless it is an actual light bulb, will return a full value of 1, so the weight is set to 0.8. It's not turned off. It's not turned all the way on. This 0.8 is a mathematic number. You really don't want to mess with that. This color here you can totally mess with. If I click on this, it pulls up the Maya color picker, and I can pick a color. And now I'm pink. Diffuse roughness is supposed to give me a slightly rougher surface, so it'll look a little bit more like concrete and less like a smooth object. It's not as effective as you might like, although it is darkening my material to some degree. The last option that I have in the base color is this thing called metalness. If I turn metalness up, you'll see that I'm starting to get these lovely metallic reflections. So metalness will give you metallic reflections. That is slightly different from specular down here. Specular controls the shiny spots, which is this spot up here on my egg. If I set the weight down to 0, you'll see that that will turn specularity on or off. And of course, values in the middle will give you degrees of specularity. The specular color will allow me to change the color of the specular highlights. We will make them green, and now I'll get a green sheen to them. I'll set that back to white. Roughness is where it starts to get interesting. The roughness is set to 0.1 by default. If I turn that all the way down, my reflections will become even sharper and even cleaner. And if I turn them up, they'll become softer and more diffuse. So there's still a specular highlight here, but now it's no longer returning a mirror-like reflection. Now it's just returning a soft sheen. You'll see that even better if I turn the metalness back on. So now I'm getting this really soft metallic reflection, whereas if my roughness was down at 0, I would be looking in a mirror. So roughness is a really interesting attribute and it gives you a lot of control. If you turn it up too high, you'll get a very diffuse reflection, which can be really interesting, but you should be aware of it. So generally, we stick to values that still return some shine. The other interesting attribute that I've got in specularity is IOR, or index of refraction. This is a real-world number. It's a physical number that you can Google, so if you wanted to know what the index of refraction of a diamond was, you could go to Google, type in diamond, IOR, and you'd get back a number. You won't see much of the IOR effect until I come down to transmission. My transmission weight is set to 0. I'm going to set it up to 1, and you'll see that my egg gives me a very clear surface. The default IOR, 1.52, is the index of refraction of glass. If I turn it up a little bit, I'll go up to 2.25. This is going to give me something a little bit closer to a crystal or a diamond look. And if I turn it down a little bit lower, let's go down to 1.12, that'll be something more like water. The index of refraction is the degree to which light bends as it passes through a transparent surface. I don't know why it's up here in specularity, but it is, and what it affects is the way that the transmission works. I'm going to set this back to the default, 1.52, and now that I've discussed base and specular, I can talk about transmission. You'll know that when my transmission is on, my base becomes grayed out. I can't use them at the same time. I can have either one or the other. Although if I turn this down, I can blend between them, and that'll give you some really weird effects. I don't recommend it. When my transmission is on, I get a completely different color. I can take this and change it. We'll make it blue. And now I've got a tinted glass. If I add a little bit of depth and a little bit of scattering, what that's supposed to do is it's supposed to give me the appearance of a particulate matter inside the glass object. Sometimes you can get a lot out of this, sometimes you can't, but it's worth messing around with if you think that you might want kind of a cloudy look. If you want a frosted look, there's an extra roughness attribute down here, and that will give you a frosted glass. My personal favorite attribute is dispersion Abbe. What this does, I'll just turn up a little bit, is it fragments out the colors so you get a prismatic look, or maybe something like an oil slick on a puddle. If you want to use dispersion Abbe, it's recommended that you do a little bit of depth and scatter, and also that you be aware that smaller numbers will cause a greater effect. So now I'm getting some really cool broken up refractions in here, almost like a rainbow. That's my personal favorite. If you just want to make something look like glass, you don't have to do any of that work. All you have to do is turn on the weight of your transmission and adjust the index of refraction to your satisfaction. I'll go ahead and turn my transmission values off. You'll see now my base reactivates, and I can adjust that and the specularity again. The next attribute I have is subsurface. Subsurface scattering is the effect that happens when light passes through the surface of an object and gets trapped inside it, like candle wax or human skin. It's fairly hard for me to demonstrate this, and I do apologize for that. One problem that I have is that at present I've only got a sky dome light in the scene, and to properly demonstrate subsurface scattering, I should really have another light, like an area light, so that I've got something that directly passes through this object. So just for the moment, we'll put this light in the scene. And right now my subsurface is off, so the light is not passing through. It's just sitting there, hitting the surface right here. If I turn my subsurface scattering on, what happens first is that you note the color goes away. I'm back to having a plain white egg. What should be happening is that now the light should be penetrating a little bit further into the surface. As I adjust this scale value, I should be able to get that light to be more precise so that I see more of the edges and less of the center. The center becomes darker. Similarly, if I adjust the radius, I can adjust the area of effect that the subsurface takes place over. The subsurface color will allow me to tint my subsurface scattering, so maybe I will make this green. I also have the ability to change my type of diffusion. By default, it's set to diffuse evenly. I can set it to random walk, which should give me areas of brightness and areas of darkness. So those are the various things that subsurface scattering do. It's a very particular look, but if you're doing anything like foliage or candles or human skin, it can be very helpful for you. Anything where light passes through and becomes translucent, this is going to give you a good look. The last few attributes I'm going to go through relatively quickly. I'll turn my subsurface scattering off. I'm going to delete this area light. And back in my aiStandardSurface node, I have this coat section which will allow me to put a clear coat on top of my egg. If I turn this on, you may not see much of a difference, but if you're trying to simulate something like a car paint or a nail polish where you know that there's color and then there's something clear on top of it, this gives you the ability to separate out a little bit of roughness for that clear coat, maybe give it a different index of refraction, maybe even give it a little color. Sheen is kind of fun. I will turn this on. Right now it's going to have a white sheen, and you can see it's got almost a satiny look to it. If I give that a color, now I can get almost an edge highlight on my material, and that's kind of fun too. Again, it's got a roughness attribute, so you can make it really rough, or you can make it really sharp. I'll turn the sheen off, and the last one I'm going to talk about is emission. If I turn on emission, that causes my object to act as a light source. So you can see now it's glowing a little bit underneath it, and it's behaving like a light bulb. Yes, you can change your emission color. We'll make that yellow. So now I've got a nice, happy yellow light. In all these cases, when my weight is all the way up at 1, the attribute is all the way on. When it's down to 0, the attribute is all the way off. And any value in between will cause you to blend. So you can go through and you can blend all of these things together. I can emit, I can add in some subsurface, and I could even add in some transmission if I was feeling crazy. I'm not feeling that crazy today. So base handles diffusion, color, and metalness. Specular will allow you to adjust the roughness of the shiny spots. Transmission will cause light to pass through your object like glass or water or crystal. Subsurface allows it to scatter, light to scatter as it passes through the object. Coat gives you a clear coat. Sheen will give you a satiny effect. And emission will allow your object to glow. So those are all of the attributes that you might care about for this project. There are still more, but we're not going to cover them. The other thing that you should know, if I close all of these, is that most but not all of the attributes we've discussed have counterparts out here in the graph area. So there's my base color, there's my metalness, specular, specular color, specular roughness, transmission, transmission color, which means that if I don't want to use the property editor, I can use the work area to have other nodes control all of these attributes. In my next video, I will start talking about what some of those nodes might be.